Welcome back, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Lisa couldn't be with us today, but she sends her love. Today's question comes from Patronatory. Can you please talk about the topic of trust in relationships, how to trust, jealousy and insecurity, etc.? This is a big one. What do you girls think?
When Shay first got started on YouTube, and like when we all were really new to it, like and how there was like that always that constant feed of comments and people saying things and like girls and women be like, Shay's so hot, blah blah blah. Was that hard at all in your guys' marriage? Did you ever get jealous or feel
I don't think so, because I feel like at that point in our marriage I felt secure enough that I didn't ever worry about anything like that. But there was a time in our relationship, you know, in the beginning where you just feel insecure, you don't really know exactly how he feels or whatnot, and that's what creates the jealousy.
Yeah.
Like you see another girl talking to him and it's like, wait, is she cuter than me? You know, does she look better than me? Oh crap, does he like her more than me? You know?
Yeah.
It's just like all of those things happen in your head, and I think that's where it is. It's mostly in your head.
Yeah.
But
At the beginning of my relationship, of course, I was jealous. We were in high school, and girls were silly, and Casey was so cute, and he was new to our school, and so all the girls thought he was amazing.
The new
He's
kid.
the new
Yeah.
and he was really good at skateboarding, and, you know. So of course there was jealousy, but I'm really secure with our relationship. I don't think there's any jealousy either way. He's not jealous, you know. If a guy talks to me and I'm not jealous.
So what would your guys' advice be then?
I think in a brand new relationship, it's really easy to let those things creep in. And I think the best thing you can do, as I always say, is like communication. But like that is the best thing, because a lot of times like you're jealous about something that's not even existing. You know, like if he does talk to a girl and it's like all this stuff starts happening, like, oh my gosh, is she cuter than me? And you start being insecure when he's just like, hi, how are you? And he hasn't even thought about her, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's easy to do that, but as long as you're talking to each other and, you know, just be like, oh, I don't know. It's so tricky.
No, it's hard because I have never had a reason to question Casey or to feel like I should be jealous. So it's hard for me to know what advice to give because I've just never dealt with that.
If you're with somebody that would make you jealous, then you have a reason to be jealous.
Right.
Right.
So
So if
it's
you're
kinda
playing
like-
games, like you're trying
if
to
a
make
guy
each
is
other
checking out every girl
jealous.
that's walking by them when you're sitting right next to them, you might be a little bit like, okay, is this guy into me or not?
Right.
But I feel like I've said that to some of my friends that are in newer relationships, because I was in a long-term relationship where you've earned your trust and you know it doesn't matter anymore. You know you love each other. It's based off of that. But some of my friends that are dating new guys and they're like, oh, you know, he was talking to this girl who's gorgeous, and it's like, they're guys, of course they're going to notice beautiful women, just like we notice beautiful women. We see a beautiful girl, it's like, oh, look how she's so pretty. Of course the guy next to you is going to think the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But it just becomes, and I don't know about you guys, but as you get older, I've become more comfortable with who I am as well. I
Right.
don't feel insecure. I feel more secure because I know what I have to offer.
Yeah.
Right.
But then you have sometimes relationships where you have to, you deal with some stuff you've dealt with, which makes it hard.
Oh, I just think back to like everything you guys have said, and I think that it comes from a place, security in a relationship comes from a place, I think it begins with you knowing who you are and what you want, and then you also know who you're in a relationship with. And I think my biggest insecurity was I didn't know who he really was, and so it was hard for me to trust him in situations because I didn't know how he was going to act. And so it was like the unknowing that made me like fearful and made me, you know, your mind just starts going and it makes up all these things. But I don't think that we knew who we each were individually, and then it was worse when we put it together in a relationship, and so it just made for a bad combination. And I think that's where like the cheating and the lying started. And then I've always respected you and Shay, like always, you know, decided to be so honest with one another, and I think that we let little lies sneak in. And it's like, if I told him I spent $70 at TJ Maxx, he's gonna get so mad at me, so I better not tell him, you know. It's like, but something so little like that started, and then it just, you know, made this big division and just allowed so many other things that were so much bigger than that to come in. And it's funny looking back now, I'm like, how did I not think that that was a big deal? But it's because the little things started and then they gradually grew bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's scary because you start to dismiss them and you don't realize like how bad that's affecting your relationship. And so my advice would just to be, you know, really pay attention to who you are and how you're feeling, and I always knew, I always knew in the back of my mind that it wasn't right, that, I had a feeling, like, I don't know if it was my intuition or, what my family was telling me, but I always just kind of knew, like, things weren't right and that I wasn't being treated how I wanted, and I wasn't being, the relationship wasn't honest. Relationship wasn't honest, and I think when I came to grips with that, then it was like, okay. And still now I find out things that I'm like, wow, I wish you would have told me about that, because it wouldn't have been a big of a deal then, But
do you think that your situation is affecting, like, if you were to be in a relationship now, would you have a harder time trusting because of it?
Yeah, totally. And that's what I always go, I'm like, am I freaking out again? And it's hard. It's once your heart's been broken in that sense of giving, I felt like I gave myself completely in all ways, and I was honest with everything. There was a point where I turned my back on my family, and they didn't want this for me, but I was like, I'm just going to give myself to this person. I love them so much. I'm going to give them everything, and I literally put everything on the plate. And then once that's broken from you, you just feel like, well, now what? Like, I lost who I was and who I ever thought I knew, and
you trusted the person you loved the most.
Yeah, I trusted them more than I trusted myself, and I think that's the key right there, is that there comes a time in, I think, a relationship where that's necessary, but I think that it was too young in our relationship for me to have done that. And so getting to know who you are and what you want is so key in a relationship, because how can you give yourself if you don't really know what you're giving? So,
Right.
But yeah, trust is hard, and it's hard now dating. It's like, I think I just get fearful of that feeling again, and so I like pull back.
Yeah.
I'm like a turtle. I'm like, I just want to be in my shell. Nobody can hurt me in here. So
Would you guys ever stay in a relationship if one cheated?
I don't think so.
It would totally depend on where, because like right now I can't imagine with like where Shay and I are at in our relationship. If he did, it would be like, who are you? I wouldn't even know who he was.
Yeah.
Because to me that would mean that there was something else going on that I wasn't aware of, or that no red flags. Like that would be so weird for that to happen. So it really just depends on like where we are in our relationship and why he did it, and that would be a huge process. You know?
I don't believe that one day it just happens like that.
Right.
I don't believe that.
Like, I
People
feel
are
like I would see signs.
It just happened. I'm like, no, it's like starts mentally, or whether it's like the way you look at somebody or the way you compliment somebody. It's like there's small steps. You're not just going to go jump off a cliff. You had to climb that mountain to get onto that cliff before you jumped. When people are like, well, it just happened. It was a like one-time thing.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that it just happens like that. It starts
You have to be
very
unhappy
small.
somewhere. If you're madly in love with somebody and you're so happy in your relationship, you don't even look outside of that.
But sometimes I don't think relationships are always about the like flowers and like, I'm just so madly in love, nothing's gonna go wrong. But I think it's more of respect. When you respect somebody, you're not like, respect sometimes is more important to me than love, because I feel like you love people that you hurt daily. Like I love Cooper, but I'm sure I offend him and do things that it's like, why did I do that to him? I love him. But respect is even more than that. It's all encompassing of, when you give somebody your respect, it's like you give them everything, kind of like, wow. And I was like that, respect is a lot to give. So
Yeah.
I have friends of mine that stayed in a relationship that they were cheated on, and I'm like, I feel like it's not, you're making it okay, but I feel like it's also unfair for the other person, because they may not ever cheat again, but this person will never trust them.
Right.
It's always going to come back. I don't feel you can have like a truly happy relationship forever if one crossed that line.
Talking about jealousy, I think that there are different kinds of jealousy too. I find that I'm most jealous of Casey and hunting. Like that is the biggest thing in our relationship. I've even said to him before, like, do I need to dress up as a deer and like run around to get your attention? Like that is probably the biggest issue in our marriage.
Please do that and then call me so I can like experience
Carly, I'm doing it. I'm running. I'm in the back.
He's paying attention to me.
You're more beautiful than a dove, sweetheart.
I mean, it's just like time. It's just
time.
his hobby, and it's what he loves. And I think that is something else that makes me not jealous of other girls or something, because I know our family's important to him, and that's where he spends a lot of his time, and hunting and his, this other thing. And I just don't think that he would make time for another woman. Like, yeah, I don't worry. And talking about like comments on
Casey's eyes.
Yes, yeah, your comments on that people say. I am flattered by those. I'm like, yeah, he's my husband, and you guys think he's hot, and
That's when you know you have confidence to in a relationship. When people look at your man or your woman and you're proud of it instead of being jealous. Yeah.
Right.
And I guess that doesn't really feel like a threat, like just a comment. Like he would look at it and be like, "Oh, look, this person thinks I'm hot. Who are they? I should," you know. Like I don't feel like that's a huge threat.
Yeah.
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 Do you guys think that, I mean, because they also asked about, where they ask about honesty and trust. It doesn't always have to be about cheating. But I was reading the 5 languages of love, and it was talking about how we all speak different love languages and how, you know, one person may be acting a certain way because their love tank is empty and they need to be shown with affirmation and like touching and maybe doing a nice deed while the other person just kind of, they need their alone time, and like how our love languages are different. And you have to speak someone's love language to make them feel loved. And sometimes, like, honesty, being honest with somebody makes them feel like they're being loved, and that's how they trust you. It's a good book.
That's interesting.
So what about trust in friendships? Do you guys have like a best friend that you tell everything to, or do you feel like
You two better never wrong me because I tell you everything.
my lips are sealed?
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say sometimes I worry about all the things you know about me. Like, oh man, if I ever did anything to Carly.
YouTube.
I just am like, do Colette and Kaylee think differently of me because I tell them everything.
I love it.
I love it too.
Yeah.
I feel like it's such a hard one, and I feel like in my older years, like I'm so old. But as I get older, like the circle of friends that I kind of confide in has gotten a lot smaller because in high school and stuff, you just kind of tell, I don't know, you just kind of are an open book. I felt like I was anyways.
Yeah.
And, as I get older, you kind of weed out the friends that you know that you can trust.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to really find that, I think. And I think the best thing you can do is try to be that friend. Try to be somebody that people can trust in. And if somebody says, I'm going to tell you this and don't tell anybody, then make sure you're not going to tell anybody, or say, don't tell me because I might tell someone.
You warned them.
Don't tell me, or I'm telling Carly.
Just a warning.
Just so you know, I tell Carly everything, so whatever you tell me,
Carly's a
I'm gonna
Gemini.
tell her.
Yeah.
I think it's like a good rule of thumb. If you don't want anybody to know, don't tell them because